Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Into the Arena podcast. I'm Sean Corcoran, the CEO of Men for Life, today with my co host, Andrew Wood. How are you today, Andrew?
I'm good, man. I like your shirt. Looks good.
Yeah, we did not plan this, but we do talk about how comfortable these shirts are, and we will tell you
Yeah.
where they come from as soon as we get a sponsorship.
Yeah, man.
Um, so last week we talked about pregnancy centers. We went through an entire document of criticisms from Planned Parenthood about pregnancy centers, and then we went through the reality of the services that pregnancy centers have provided based on a report from the Charlotte Lozier Institute. It took us the entire hour, so we didn't get through everything we wanted to talk about pregnancy centers. So today is part two of that conversation, where we're going to get into the actual services that are provided, not just by the numbers, but by the impact that they have on the women, on the men, on the babies, on the families that come into the pregnancy centers. Andrew has years of experience both running pregnancy center and working for CareNet, who has thousands of pregnancy center affiliates, and so working hand in hand with those pregnancy centers. Based on his experience, based on other information that we will link in the description, we're going to talk about those services. But before we get into that, if you guys enjoy the content that we're putting out, I'm going to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm going to ask you to click the like button at the bottom of this video and help us to beat this algorithm. YouTube is not pro-life friendly, so we need all the help we can get to get this into as many hands as in front of as many eyes as possible.
And I
Also,
would also encourage folks to put positive comments. Oftentimes when people talk like us about life, a lot of those comments are not so positive. I was looking the other day and I was like, oh, my kid can't see what somebody wrote. So, but that's fine.
yeah, that's a really good point. Go ahead and support what we're doing so that we can continue to support the pregnancy centers and support all of the people in the pro-life movement. We have this podcast, we have the Men for Life podcast, where I interview people in the pro-life movement and people that have been impacted by abortion, former abortionists, pro-life speakers. And so in addition to supporting us by clicking the subscribe button, the like button, leaving comments, please go to menforlife.org/donate. You can support us financially, help us there, and with our with the Men for Life arena, the movement we are creating to get men especially to become more active in the pro-life movement, and with the Men for Life Fatherhood program for pregnancy centers, which we'll also be talking about at the end of this video. So that's how you can support us, as we can continue to support people in the pro-life movement. And one of the ways that Andrew is currently working to support those people in the pro-life movement, specifically pregnancy center directors, is in working with a couple of other pro-life advocates, Stephen Holland and Denisha Work. I'm not going to be able to say Denisha's last name, if you could say it for me, and Laura Eden, on We See You retreats. Today, as this is released, we'll also be releasing an interview with Stephen specifically about We See You retreats that has all the details. But I'm going to let Andrew talk about that for a moment as well, because it does fit into what we're talking about today with pregnancy centers.
Yeah, so Stephen then reached out and we connected, and then Lauren and Denisha. It's been a great opportunity to really walk through, as we're speaking around the country and talking with pregnancy center leaders. What we tend to find is when you ask someone, hey, how's it going? Oftentimes there's a lot of tears, and all we said was, hey, how are things? I had a conversation just yesterday with someone, and that's kind of the direction it took. And that's because this work is heavy. And so after talking with Stephen and the team and really praying through what that meant, we thought, wouldn't it be great if we offered up We See You retreats where we take time to see these folks, to restore and to rest. And again, you're going to have a conversation with Stephen, and we'll kind of walk through all the details. But our first executive retreat is coming up in Chattanooga, February 5th through the 7th. You can still register, just search We See You retreats. We'd love to see you out there. And the goal, again, is that it would be a retreat. I talk to leaders all the time, and what I tell them is because you are leading an organization, sometimes you don't get to retreat. You have a retreat for your staff, but you're facilitating it, you're planning it, you're taking care of all the logistics. And this is an opportunity for these leaders to come and just rest and really get renewed They're not going to be facilitating anything. We're not going to be doing any strategic planning. We're not going to be talking about fundraising. We're just going to really be getting to a place of rest. You get to come to the greatest state in the union, Tennessee. Chattanooga is a great place. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. February 5th through the 7th.
Yeah, and just to kind of hit on something that I heard that was really profound, and I talked about this in the conversation with Stevenson, but it was from a sermon that I watched, and the preacher brought up that man was created on the sixth day, and he was given work, he was given a will to obey, he was given a woman to love on the sixth day. But before he had done anything, on the seventh day, he was given rest. Mm-hmm. And so it's a reminder to us that when we take that Sabbath and when we take that rest, it's not always because we have gotten to a point of exhaustion. It is also because that rest enables us to move forward into the next step, rejuvenated, renewed, refilled with the Holy Spirit, refilled with energy to kind of move forward and do the work that God has given us. So even if you're not yet at a point where you're like, man, I really need a break, but I don't need it that bad yet. You can think of these retreats as an opportunity to really renew, which is part of the retreat experience, your mind and your body and your soul, so that you can move fully into that next round or months of pregnancy center work, because it is difficult, to meet with people at many times in crisis at the hardest times of their life.
Well, and I would encourage folks too. That's not just for pregnancy centers. If you are a believer, the Lord gave us all rest. I mean, Jesus, when he's on the boat with the disciples and the storm is raging, what is Jesus doing? He's sleeping. He's resting. So if our King needed rest, then we need to take those moments of rest too. So I would just encourage you, especially for men. I think sometimes men are like, I don't need that. I don't need rest. I don't need a Sabbath. I'm just going to go all in. And I would just encourage you. You're going to be a better husband, a better dad, a better employee, a better boss, a better leader, if you are taking those moments and just taking a deep breath and resting.
So that'll be February 5th through 7th in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yes.
I will include a link here, as well as the episode of the Men for Life podcast with Stevenson Holland that talks more, it goes in more depth about the We See You retreats. Before we get started on our conversation, I do want to point out that Men for Life will be present in DC next week. I will be doing a presentation at the Pro-Life Advocates Conference on, it's called Not a Women's Issue, The Truth About Men and Abortion. I've also been given an opportunity to represent Men for Life on stage at the rally right before the march. And then at the end of the march, I will be speaking on the steps of the Supreme Court with Silent No More, sharing my story of the impact that abortion had on my life and calling men to action, because this is not just a women's issue. I'll also be at March for Life. At any point, if you see me at the March for Life, come up to me. I'll be interviewing people about why it is important for men to be active in the pro-life movement. If you have an answer for that, if you have thoughts on that, if you have an answer to why are some men pro-choice, I'm going to be asking these questions and filming them and putting them on the Men for Life social media pages. So if you want to be a part of that, if you have an answer, come up, find me. If I don't find you first, we'll record that and then we'll throw it up on social media, and you can help to share the message from another perspective as well.
All right, man. And I'll just say, and Sean won't say this, but congratulations. I think it's awesome that Men for Life is going to be represented. It's awesome that the Lord is opening doors for you, my friend, and excited to see what 2026 is going to hold for not just you individually, but Men for Life. And as more and more people see the value, I do think we're on the cusp of something really special. And I pray that 2026 is the year. So hats off to you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, and I appreciate all your support every day. All right, let's dive into it. Pregnancy centers. What we talked about before this was starting out by just talking about your personal experience, having been the director of a pregnancy center, in the services that the center that you were the director of provided. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I started. I was 30 years old when I took the role of executive director at Hope Resource Center in Knoxville. And it was incredible. I was just talking to their director the other day about some things. So very much still involved, financially and prayerfully and everything. But when I took that role at that moment in my life, I mean, I knew I cared about the issue of life. The Lord had convicted me on, what are you really doing for those that are facing an unplanned pregnancy? And really, at that moment, all I was doing was giving it lip service, arguing with people on social media, voting, and then maybe putting a sticker on my car. And the Lord just really convicted me of, hey, do you really believe that is enough? Is that as much as your family can do for the issue of life? And so the way I got connected to the pregnancy center, I Googled pregnancy center in Knoxville, found them, ultimately got connected, and then ultimately became the executive director. And one of the questions that I asked the staff when in the first staff meeting was, tell me about the pregnancy center. And they said, we're Knoxville's best kept secret. And I thought, well, that's going to change. If I'm here, we're not going to be a secret anymore. And at that moment, I mean, we provided pregnancy tests, we provided ultrasounds. At that time, we had 2 ultrasound machines. By the time I left, we had 3 ultrasound machines, pregnancy tests, ultrasounds, STI testing, so STD testing. Again, trying to catch folks before an unplanned pregnancy even occurs. So some people are like, why would a pregnancy center provide STI testing? Well, it's because our hope is we're getting a conversation. We can see behavioral patterns change and maybe prevent an unplanned pregnancy from ever happening. And then, of course, if they come in with a pregnancy test or ultrasound, we're trying our best to be there for them and pray that they choose life. But I was there for maybe 3 or 4 years, and we had nurse practitioners on staff. So not every pregnancy center has nurse practitioners, but we had 3 nurse practitioners on staff, and we were in a university town right there in Knoxville. And so as we're having conversations about the services we provided, we were always talking about, is there more that we can do that will be in line with our mission and who we are? And so in conversations with our nurse practitioners and conversations with all of our medical staff, our medical executive committee, and our board, we decided that we would add well woman care. And so what that is, women typically get annual exams. And so they're checking for a number of things. And so in our mind, we were thinking, okay, what can we do again to help change behavior? So if folks are making poor choices, if they're running around doing things that they that we would say they shouldn't be doing, that their mama would say they shouldn't be doing, like, how can we intervene on the front end? And so we just polled our clients and we said, if we offered annual exams for you, would you come? And we were offering for free. And so if they were going to the health department, if they were going to Planned Parenthood, if they were going wherever, they were having to pay for that annual exam. And it was, almost 100% of the clients we surveyed were like, 100% I would come to you for that. And so we added that care. And that was an amazing opportunity again to step in. But what we didn't know at that time was 2020 was going to come. And so when 2020 hit, the health department was like, hey, we have a partner in the community that provides services that now we don't have to provide because we're focused on some other things. And so it really made us a great partner in the community. I remember one of the best things that I remember is when we got a phone call we got a fax, and it was Planned Parenthood sending us medical records from a client because that client is now coming to us for their services and not to the abortion clinic. And I thought, man, isn't it great that now there's a normal routine of phone calls between our office and their office because people are leaving the abortion clinic and coming to the pregnancy center, not just for pregnancy tests and ultrasounds, but now they're coming for their annual exam and they're not having to pay a dime. And so it's a beautiful thing. But outside of that, there's pregnancy centers across this state. There's pregnancy centers across the country that are providing, a lot of material assistance. We also had baby showers and parenting education for women and for men. We would do, 25 to 30 baby showers every quarter. And so And pregnancy centers across the country, there are some doing even more than that. They're doing prenatal care. They have very robust fatherhood programs. They're partnering with sidewalk advocates, and people are being referred to them that way. I mean, the list goes on and on about the work that's being done. I know we're going to get into it here in a little while, but I've had opportunities to sit down with state leaders, legislators, and even the governor, and was able to kind of walk them through, hey, I need y'all to know how much money the pregnancy center is saving the state. I need y'all to know how much money the pregnancy center is saving the the taxpayer, and how much money is going out the door to the abortion clinic. Like, something's off here. And oftentimes when I would have those conversations, even sitting down with the governor of Tennessee, he would be like, he had no idea. And well, why? Because he's got a lot of things on his plate. And so our goal and our mission was to serve those that are in our community that needed care, that were facing pregnancy decisions, that were just in a tough spot. And it's a beautiful thing that there are men and women day in and day out opening the doors of the pregnancy center to serve those that are in need. And it's happening right now. Even as we talk, it's happening, and it should be celebrated.
Yeah, we talked about last week. We talked about all of the material items that were given to that were given out by pregnancy centers. I'm not going to go through all of that again because it was millions and millions of things. It was 452 million goods and services provided to clients of pregnancy centers last year. But one of the ways that this works is people come to the center, and the moms may go through parenting classes, right? Or some centers offer skills classes, job skills classes, to help them to prepare for job skills. And as they complete these programs, they that's it. Like, that's the payment, right? The payment for, some of them call them baby bucks, and I'm sure there's a dozen different names, but
Sure.
I'll just go with baby bucks. And so the payment for these services, so to speak, is learning, right? So you're providing a service to the mom, and the same thing applies in the fatherhood programs many times. But you're providing a service to the mom, and by accepting that service and learning that skill, she gets paid through baby bucks, which then allows her to use for clothes, for diapers, for strollers, for formula, for for whatever there may be that is needed. I saw a pregnancy center post last week, and I want to say it was in North Carolina, because I think it was somewhat related to the hurricane that happened last year. And just last week they posted, hey, we have been giving out formula to anyone and everyone who has asked for it since the hurricane. And, our supplies are now at a point where we have to say we're only going to give formula to clients of the center. Because the heart is for anyone and everyone that is needed, that needs something. And so, it really is, when pregnancy centers grow, and this is from my experience being on the board of a pregnancy center. When they grow from the initial, let's do a pregnancy test, let's do an ultrasound, let's talk to the mom about her options, and that is our main objective, to what else can we do. It really expands into something that supports not only mom, not only baby, not only dad, but families and the communities and society. Maternity houses. Did y'all's pregnancy center happen to have a maternity house associated with it?
No, we didn't, because there were other ones. There were other organizations in the community that were already doing that. But yeah, I mean, those are great opportunities. I remember, leading a dad's class, and you were talking about, skills. We would meet in different businesses around the community. That was where we wouldn't. Sometimes we'd bring the dads into the pregnancy center for a depending on what we were going over that night. But often we would be at a tire shop. We'd be at a financial advisor's office. We'd be at a contractor's office. And at the contractor's office, that dude literally offered a job to every dad in the room.
Yeah.
And so again, it was, how do we leverage our partnerships? How do we leverage our relationships to get them in front of people they would never get in front of? And so that's what we did with the dad's class. And we had a young man that was in high school, girlfriend was pregnant, and he ended up getting a job at that contractor's office. They were going to put him through trade school, and he was able to, at 17 years old, step up, be the dad he'd been called to be, even at an early age, and provide, protect, do all those things. And it was because we put a bridge in front of him to a company that he might not have been able to get in front of otherwise.
Right. It really is all about serving people and trying to figure out where we can help them. In the maternity houses, while they're not always affiliated with pregnancy centers, sometimes they are. Our good friend Heather Lawless operates a pregnancy center, which is also associated or affiliated with a maternity home, and affiliated with, now as of last week, I believe, a coffee shop.
Yeah, man.
Which is the purpose of which is to provide employment to the young ladies at the center and in the maternity home, so that they can learn the job skills that they need, and so that they can earn income. And then they have their fourth initiative is a fatherhood program as well. So sometimes they are connected, sometimes they're not. Jarrell Godsey was sharing with me a story of one maternity home that's affiliated with Heartbeat that brought a young lady in, and she lived there for 6 years throughout the pregnancy, and for a total of 6 years while she completed college. And that gets into kind of what we were talking about last week about how these services aren't just until the baby's born, right? The heart of the pro-life movement is absolutely to save as many babies as possible, but a lot of times the criticism is, what about when the baby's born? Well, that's not really a criticism, because we're already there.
Right.
Like we get that. This isn't a, hey, we want you to have this baby, and after you have this baby, we are going to stop talking to you. Like, congratulations, here's a card, go get some Starbucks. Like, this is a life that we're talking about, and the pro-life movement cares about every single life. And so all of these services last a long time. You brought up the fatherhood program, the dads that you worked with. And, I'm glad you brought up the contractor who offered everybody a job, because I was going to bring that story up. That's a big deal, right? To say, hey, I support this pregnancy center and the work that you are doing, to the point where I will offer every single person in this room a job. And that is the heart of the pro-life movement. Whether it's people who are working in pregnancy centers, whether it's people who are working to boost pregnancy centers with programs like we are, whether it's people who are working to support pregnancy centers, and there's so many different things that go into this, or whether it's just the community, who is supportive of the pro-life movement. The heart is really to help as many people as possible, and I think that's something that is many times overlooked. But fatherhood programs are a really big deal, and since you brought it up, I think now's the right time to jump into it, because that's where my heart is, right? It is for the men. And so one of the statistics that we read through last week is that 61% of pregnancy centers have a fatherhood program. I know from my experience talking to different pregnancy centers that the majority of the pregnancy centers that don't have a fatherhood program are seeking to either create, to bring one on, or to start implementing one. A lot of times the biggest holdback is the pregnancy centers are run primarily by women and staffed primarily by women who understand that they are not in the best position to help men learn how to be men. And so that right now is a lot of times why pregnancy centers may not have a fatherhood program yet. In your work with CareNet, do you have any suggestions on how people, pregnancy centers specifically, can get men engaged? I have some ideas, but I'm curious as to
Sure.
what you found.
Yeah, I would just encourage folks. And I think, there are some pregnancy centers that are like, what are we not doing enough? Like, we're already being pulled and stretched. And
Yeah.
I would just encourage them that, no, you are doing amazing. I think we're just at a point where there's a movement within young men that they recognize I didn't have the dad I needed to have. I'm not going to make that mistake, but I need help. I need help to be that man. I need help to be that dad. So there was a time, you know, decade and a half ago where there just wasn't a lot of dudes coming in the pregnancy center with their girls. That's just the reality. And I think we're just changed. Even I was having a conversation with my wife earlier. I was walking through the garage. We have a radio playing all the time, and they were interviewing a country singer because we have it on country radio, and who stopped drinking, and everything he was saying was like he was saying it as if we didn't know. We never knew this information. And I came in the house and I was like, we've known for decades, like the health benefits of stopping that thing. But we're at a trend now where you're seeing actors and singers and celebrities put the bottle on the shelf and they're going, man, my life is so much better when I do that. And so I think there are men out there going, hold on, I probably should like take responsibility and be the dad to this child and either a partner to this woman or a husband to this woman. And so what I would encourage pregnancy centers to do is, and I think that's why we're seeing the numbers increase every single year, is they're looking around and going, we got to do something. I mean, that's what happened to me. I walked through the lobby and I saw a dude sitting there and I was like, he's by himself. We have nothing for him. Nothing. He's just going to sit here twiddling his thumbs, and then he's doing what we want him to do, and we're not doing anything for him. And so that was the light bulb moment for me and for our center. But I would just, when I would go speak at churches or our partners in the community, there are men out there waiting to be asked.
Yes.
They're probably not going to come to you, but they're
They
waiting
don't think
to
there's
be
a place
asked.
for them.
They think it's a woman's issue.
Yep.
What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to help? And I would just encourage you, give them something to do. Men are designed to do something.
Yeah.
And so give them something to do and give them that opportunity. Every business I called, when we thought about what we were going to do for dads, every business I called and was like, here's our idea. Would you partner with us? Every one of them said yes.
Yep.
Every one. There wasn't one no. And it's because they were like, of course and some of those guys are like, we need good workers. And so, yes, we would love to bring them to our business, to what we're doing. We'd love to help them balance a budget. We'd love to help them think about their financial future for their children and for their spouse. We'd love to help them make better choices about their health. And again, every single one of those partners that I reached out to, they jumped at the chance to step up, because many of those were men going, I've been waiting for you to call and ask me to do something. Yes, we will do this.
Right. Like they just don't know what to do. And so I wrote an article for Life Advancement Group, and in a collective of pregnancy centers that they serve. And it was about fatherhood programs and why now is the time for a fatherhood program. And one of the comments on the social media post of the article was from a pregnancy center director, and she said, I could not disagree more. And then she went through her answer, and she didn't give a specific, so I'm not gonna, I don't want to blast her on this. I think that she meant what she meant, and it comes from a good place. But I think what she meant was, we don't have the resources to do the work that we're currently doing and to also do this. And so that's the question I want to follow up with her is, if that's the issue, what if I were to tell you that I guarantee you there are men in your community who support your organization who would jump at the opportunity? I was a guest of a pregnancy center director at their banquet last fall, and she was gracious enough to say, hey, why don't you get up and just talk about Men for Life, and you got 3 minutes. It was 3 minutes. So really I had, 7 sentences that I could say. And and I was talking about fatherhood programs and how we will be partnering with that center, with the Men for Life Fatherhood Program. After that event, I had 16 different men come up to me. I spoke for 3 minutes. 16 different men came up and said, "We want to help. How can we help?" And and I think that that is a theme that I see every time that I speak. I usually speak way longer and honestly have less than 16. So I might just only start I might
That's
start
right.
charging more and only speaking for 3 minutes. Um, but the point of that is that what you said, that the men are ready. They're there, but they've been coming along with their wives because they've been asked to come. They support the pro-life movement. They know they're pro-life, but there's never been an ask for anything other than a check, you know? And so, or maybe to help put up shelves
Right.
in the center,
Well, it's the
you know?
same reason why after Roe was overturned, I was speaking at a large church, and, multiple men came up and were like, "Hey, I'll get my AR. I'll come up there and guard your center. I know probably things are going to get wild." And I was like, "Well, I don't really. The last thing I need on the front page of the paper is, a shootout at the local pregnancy center, sponsored by this church." But I do think what that showed is exactly what we just said. They were hungry, and
Yeah.
they thought, well, here's the opportunity. You have predominantly female staff. We're looking at the news, we're watching what's happening. People are going crazy. They're throwing things through the windows of pregnancy centers. They're vandalizing. So now's our chance. We can stop that. We can prevent that. And so what I tried to do was channel that excitement and energy into, hey, host the dad's class. Come
Yeah.
teach our dads how to be good men. Come teach our dads how to be good husbands. Like, and get them to a place of, oh, okay, that doesn't mean that you don't need to guard and protect. My thing was, we're going to have cops do it, because if there's going to be a shootout, I'd much rather it be, on them and not and not on,
Right. Yeah, for
the
sure.
local church, killing somebody that was doing that. But again, it showed they were hungry to do something,
Yes.
and they looked in that moment and were like, now's the time. And I'm like you, whenever I would go speak, oftentimes guys would be like, oh, there's a guy up there, so that's a connection. And then when I would talk about what we were doing with dad's class, and they were like, oh, I could go to a tire shop and just kind of be a man with these potential dads and help them. Like, yeah, 100%, I'll do that. Those are easy opportunities to connect. But again, and it really is the same model. When a pregnancy center goes speak at the church, a lot of women come up and they want to get involved. Why? Because they care deeply about young ladies that are facing pregnancy decisions. And, some of those women see themselves in that woman. Some of those men see themselves in that young man. And so it really is an opportunity to get the church as a whole involved in the work that's being done. And pregnancy centers have been doing that for decades on end.
Yeah. And we have so the Vitae Foundation just completed their men and abortion study. They're going public with the results on the 24th at the Pro Life Summit. But I did have Brandy. I interviewed Brandy Meeks
Yeah.
already, and she shared some of the stuff. And then I was on the advisory board for that study, so we had a meeting today's Tuesday. We had a meeting last week, and I had permission to share some of this stuff. But here's some of the findings that they had. When these men, and these were neither pro-choice nor pro-life men, these were what they consider the movable middle. And when these men found out about a pregnancy, an unexpected pregnancy, it elicited 3 responses: fear, shock, and an opportunity for men to grow and become responsible. Another theme that was prevalent was that the concern was about a lack of readiness, focus on financial readiness, the inability to provide a good environment. So, there's several more themes, but just to kind of touch on those 2 things because of what pregnancy center fatherhood programs can provide, fear is normal, and fear can be a great opportunity or a great driver of, now it's an opportunity for me to grow up and be responsible, because yesterday I was only responsible for me. And if I didn't do the work that I needed to do and I was hungry, then I'm the one responsible for being hungry, right? But now I've got somebody else to take care of. And so I need to work harder. And that's a good thing. That's not a negative thing. So capitalizing on that. But if these young men don't have someone to guide them through that, that's where the fear, is going to overtake the drive to become more responsible. The focus on financial readiness and the inability to provide a good environment,
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that you have the opportunity to grow up and become responsible about. It does cost more money to have a baby, and it costs more money to have five.
Or six. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
or
does.
six.
Yeah.
But what that means is, like, now I got to figure out where to get it. Like that's what it means to be a man. The problem is that for a lot of these young men who are facing an unplanned pregnancy, they never had that male role model to tell them, hey, the fear is okay. It's what you do with that fear that is important. The opportunity to grow up and become a man and be responsible is real. What are you going to do with it? And you can do it. And so one of the things that I say at pregnancy center banquets when talking about fatherhood is that if we as men sit around and say, and this is a generational thing, and I've probably said this to you before, but you know, the next generation of young men just doesn't know what it's like to be a man. We're doomed, right? That's something that the World War II vets said about their kids, the hippies and all that stuff. And generations just say it about the next generation. But here's the issue. Today, we know about the fatherhood epidemic. Like, we have statistics. We know that the reason these young men don't know what it means to be a man is because nobody's ever told them. And so if we are going to sit around as good men and say, man, we're doomed, but we're not going to do anything about it, then we're failing in our own masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And that line, coupled with a couple of other short sound bites, really drives men to say, you're right. I mean, one guy came up and he was like, I was crying.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing enough. What can I do to help someone else? And it doesn't take, being, what is masculinity, right? Masculinity is, when we talk about biblical masculinity at Men for Life, we're talking about protect, provide, lead, serve, and leave a legacy that honors God, right? We're not talking about guns, while guns are fun.
Sure.
We're not talking about hunting. We're not talking about, being the athlete. We're not talking about, being able to bench press 315 pounds. I mean, I love lifting really heavy weight, but you try to get me to run 5 miles and I'm just going to tell you no.
Yeah.
So, there's things that men can do. Being active is really important, but to be able to protect is why it's important to be active. To be able to provide for your family is why it's important to be healthy. To be able to lead your children, and to lead others in the community, and your wife, to be able to serve others. That's why it's important to be active and healthy. And how are we going to leave that legacy that honors God? And we can do that through those first 4 components, right? And so many times as men, we get into this place where, as we're growing up, we're told, that our job is to provide, and we just get stuck on provide. And so, what does that mean? It means go to school, get a good job, get married, have kids, and work hard and make a bunch of money. And after so many years, you get to a point where you've leveled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you're on cruise control almost. And so that mission that drove you to get to the point that you're at is no longer your mission, because now you're just in it. You can get up every day, you can go to work, you can do your work with your eyes closed, and and then you go home and you do all of the things, and maybe your kids are grown at this point. So where is your mission? And men don't just need a mission when they're young, right? Men need a mission for life. And so serving in these fatherhood programs, by mentoring these young men, by bringing up generations of men to be good, to understand what masculinity really is, to be good fathers, to be good husbands, to be good community members, it is an awesome opportunity for the men in your pregnancy center community. And, and I know you said it, and I've said it now several times, but the men are there, they want it, and they're waiting. Like,
Well, and two, what happens when we show that is you are combating the nonsense of the culture. So the way I'm raising not just my boys but my girls is, when they see something on TV, when they hear a commercial, when they see something out in the world, they have a lens at which they look through that. And so then they look to me and they go, and it's rewarding when they're able to see the nonsense and almost roll their eyes at the nonsense. My family, the men in my life, gave me a great foundation. So when I went to college and majoring in political science and all the nonsense around me, I was able to call it what it was and be like, no, you ain't, that's wrong. That is wrong to its core, and we're not going to stand for it. And so we have an opportunity. I remember sitting down with the dads in Knoxville and just walking them through what is masculinity and allowing them to answer. And you know what? These dudes that were secular, some of them were in other religions, different walks of life, some college educated, some not. They all ultimately told me the same thing. And it lined up with a value system that we hold dear. And so as we're teaching them and leading them, it prepares them when they go out into the world and they hear about toxic masculinity and the world is telling them how awful they are. And I saw a podcast the other day where, a secular woman was saying that we don't need men for anything. And, they're really just icing on the cake. We'd be fine without them. And I'm going, are you insane?
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say we don't need women for anything. That's so bonkers.
Right.
But if you're not careful, that is the lie that the enemy is telling, and it's in our culture. And so our young men are hearing that in school. They're hearing that, and if we're not
way
discipling,
more than you and I and anyone our age or older ever
oh
did.
my gosh, yeah, so much. And so if we're not discipling them and preparing them, say, hey, you're going to hear nonsense.
Right.
You're gonna hear things that you're like, that just doesn't compute with what I know. But if you haven't trained them up, they're gonna hear it and go, I don't know, maybe that sounds compassionate. Maybe that sounds, we got behind a car the other day, and one of the bumper stickers I couldn't even read out loud because it had the F word on it. But one bumper sticker simply said, "Divorce your Republican husband." And I told my family, I was like, well, they seem like nice people. They seem great. But again, my kids read that not to get, party affiliation, but they read that and they go, well, that seems kind of like nonsense. Yeah. But if you have no foundation, then you may take that hook, line, and sinker and go, I'm just loving people. I'm just being compassionate. I'm just, and in reality, you're pointing people away from the good, the true, and the beautiful, and pointing them to what the enemy would push you toward. And it's just not, there's so much more out there for us. And men were called to battle, and, let's get after it. Like we don't have time to waste. And you talked about mission earlier. My granddaddy's 92 years old. He still drives a tractor. He still drives his vehicle. He has a mission every day.
Yeah.
Now he's not able to move as good as he could back in the day. Some days he gets done, his feet are swollen where he has to get help taking off his shoes. But he has a mission when he gets up. And the mission is not to sit there on his hands and do nothing. Right. And that's why he's 92. It's been formulated in him.
And that's a great example because, when we're talking about as men looking at the next generation and saying they don't know what's going on, but we're not doing anything about it. It'd be like if your granddaddy were to look out at the land and say, man, like that's all over. It's all overgrown. Yeah. And, and it's horrible. Like, it just looks like crap. And then just sit back down.
Yeah. While the tractor's just sitting there. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, so get on your tractors, man.
Yes. Go buy one.
You brought up masculinity and, and that was one of the other themes. And it was really interesting because as I went and witnessed, or observed many of these interviews that the Vitae Foundation did, when I talked to Dr. Pauls about this, it was a theme that was consistent even in the ones I wasn't in. These men, for the most part, for whatever reason, not by design, grew up without a father figure. Okay. So their ideas of masculinity came from two places, either from their mother or from seeing what wasn't there. So the three things that they across the board suggested were important for an ideal masculine role model were presence, And again, like there was no presence in most of these men's lives. Responsibility and good character. Okay. So I say that to say that even though these men didn't have that male role model in their life, they one of them identified his male role model growing up as Deion Sanders. So these are like, they're looking to people who aren't even, personally connected to them. But they're hungry for it, right? But I want to go back to presence, because what they're hungry for is presence and good character. And when I spoke to Dr. Pauls, and I was like, how do we get that? Like, how do we help these young men to become that as they come into the pregnancy centers? Can we do it through online stuff? What they said, every single one of them, in saying, in talking about what is it going to take to help young men to build that good character, to become a masculine role model, said it has to be in person. The way he said it was one-on-one. And so that really gets to what our pregnancy center is doing. There is a huge difference. If I were to create through Men for Life a fatherhood program and blast it out to society, and people could just watch videos of me and you and other people that would contribute, talking about what does it mean to be a good father, that might make great TV, like that might make great YouTube. But is that really going to influence them as much as in person? And you and I obviously can't be raising the world, right?
Right.
But there are 3,000 pregnancy centers, and I'm rounding up from that 2,775 because it's easy math. 3,000 pregnancy centers in this country, okay? If each one were able to reach one man a week, so we round that to 50 men a week, okay? That's 150,000 men a year coming into these pregnancy centers. Let's say only half of them say, yes, I want what you're telling, like what you have. Like I want to learn how to be a better man. That's 75,000 men a year. The impact that these pregnancy centers can have, and that the men who are volunteering can have in mentoring 75,000 men a year is huge. Like the impact could literally change society and change the culture, not only to a life affirming culture, because abortion is important. It is the driver of what we do at Men for Life, but society could benefit on so many other levels if we had, if we raised up 75,000 good men every year.
Well, and the beauty is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, with what you're doing with Men for Life, what CareNet's doing with Dr. Dad, what Heartbeat's done, what Bright Course is doing, like you can have really good studies. I mean, I have one right now with Bright Course, and I talked to the folks at CareNet, and they were like, yeah, the reality is once they finish one, they need something else to go to. So this isn't competition. This isn't like use mine versus use theirs. Like if we're doing it right, all of these can work together. 100%. And so you're not having to reinvent the wheel. What you're doing is you have good content, whether it's Bright Course, CareNet, Heartbeat, Men for Life, whatever it may be. There's others out there as well. You have good resources, but you need men one-on-one, which I can't provide unless you're here locally. Sean, you can't provide unless they're locally. And so it gives us an opportunity to go, hey, here's the content. The same thing we've been doing with the female clients for decades. Here's the really good content. Now let's talk about it. Let's have a mentor for this young man to see what it's like to be a godly husband, a godly father, a godly leader, a godly co-worker. I mean, whatever it may be, these are opportunities for us to step in those moments. And it's a beautiful thing when Brandy Meeks and her team are starting to see it, when Charlotte Lozier is starting to see it, when everyone is starting to go, hey, this is a collective effort. So when we say we need the church to be more involved, to be honest, and this may hurt some people's feelings, for a long time when we said we need the church involved, we really meant we need the females that are at the church involved. And so there were a lot of males at the church going, I mean, what do I do? And it's like, hey, come participate in this, and we'll give you a pink shirt or a little frilly, and it's like, well, that doesn't work for me. And look, I'm not throwing shade at what's been done. I think what we're seeing now is an opportunity where men are hungry. Men in the church are hungry to get involved. Men that are coming into the pregnancy center are hungry for a godly man to mentor them and to disciple them. And so when we say now we need the church involved, it is the men and women of the local church coming together to better serve. And like you said, if we get on the outside or on the other end of that, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, if me and you are old and gray and still jacked, but old and gray, and we're looking at the end of life, and we look back and go, can you believe millions of dads were discipled through, not just through these platforms, not just through the studies that were provided, but through one-on-one time at pregnancy centers across this country? The church answered the call, and because men got better, families got better. Because
Yes.
men got better, communities got better. Because men got better, children were in an environment that allowed them to flourish instead of a destruction type of environment. I mean, and so it makes a huge difference, and it is a beautiful thing that folks are starting to wake up to the need for that. And frankly, this wasn't, I think some people want to throw shade at the pregnancy center. The reality is the missing piece this entire time was men sitting on their hands and not actively engaging. And so that's
Yes.
not the fault of the ladies that are leading pregnancy centers. The reason they're leading is because they engaged, they raised their hand. And oftentimes men were just sitting there believing the lie of the culture that this is a woman's issue.
Yes.
And so this isn't the fault of the ladies that have been leading this movement for
It
decades.
was never up to the women in the pro-life movement
No.
to call men to help.
Absolutely.
Like, that is an absence of masculinity. It was up to men to say, man, this is a grave injustice. Like babies are dying, women are getting hurt mentally, physically, and I'm supposed to be doing something.
Yep.
Instead of, oh, we'll just let the ladies take care of this. Like,
100%.
that is a failure of masculinity. But and I was going to say this about men mentoring, but I think it goes to this as well. You bring up in your book, Hero Ghost Villain, several times that, hey, if you look at your life right now and you think, hey, I may have missed the mark here, it's not too late, right? Like, it is not too late. And you could probably say that more poetically than I'm pretending to repeat it. But
today's the day. I mean, it's the same, whether it's stepping into masculinity, whether it's stepping into fitness, whether it's in, the other day I was like, I really want to read the Bible all the way through in 2026. But I've let 2 weeks go by in January. And so I put together a calendar and I was like, what do I need to do starting today? Why? Because I can't get back January 1st. So what do I need to do starting today? And the same thing with whether it's your health. What do I need to do today? If it's mentoring, if it's, I missed it with my kids, or I have an opportunity with children that are now part of my life because of another marriage. My stepdad is a pillar in my life, but I'm not his biologically. He didn't come into my life till I was 14 years old. But he understood there were some things where he missed it in his past. And he said, with these Wood boys, I'm not going to miss it. And he made an adjustment. And so there's opportunity to make that adjustment. We can sit back and be, weak-kneed and woe is me, and I don't know. Or you can just move forward and say, from this day on, I'm going to be a different human. And guess what? People are going to recognize, and people are going to go, wow, there's something, something's happened in that dude's life. Like, there's something different. Your kids are going to notice. Your wife's going to notice. Like, the family's going to notice. It makes all the difference in the world. And again, we can sit back and say, woe is me, or if I say this, what are my old friends going to think? Or we can just go, yeah, today's the day. The change is happening. What do I need to do today to help me be a better man and to help the men in my community be better? And you don't have to be like some articulate, you don't have to have a dissertation. You don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to have a degree. Some of the best dad's classes we did, my favorite, were at the tire shop.
Yeah. And I think, some of the best conversations that can happen are from people who feel like, man, I failed too many times, because it's real, and we all fail, and we've gotten this weird place in society where we hide our failures, and we hide our failures at the expense of our own well-being, and at the expense of anyone else who has failed in that same capacity. One of the things that happens every single time that I speak about losing my first child to abortion in any capacity is, I will have at least one man come up to me afterwards and say, I haven't told anybody this in 20 years, 30 years, because, we hide until we recognize, hey, I'm not alone, and I can talk about this. And so men who might say, man, I'm an imperfect man. You are the perfect man for this job, because you know who else is imperfect? The young man who's sitting there in an unplanned pregnancy, scared about what's going to happen in his life and whether or not he's going to be able to do it, whether or not he's going to be able to provide for that woman, whether or not he's going to be able to provide for that child, whether or not he's going to fail the way maybe his father failed, or whether he's going to be able to succeed. And so he needs to hear that we all fail. He needs to hear that not only do we all fail, but after that failure, we can come back, and we can learn from it, and we can be greater. Because if he never had that example growing up, then this is the opportunity for you to provide it. And so, while this, we never at any point when we started talking about how we were going to go through this conversation said,
Yeah.
let's talk about calling men to action in fatherhood programs, but it's just the way the conversation went. And so, we might as well just stick with it. And I would say, hey, this is the opportunity, and there is a movement in the pro-life movement. There is a momentum in the pro-life movement towards men being active in the pro-life movement as a whole, towards fathers in unexpected pregnancies. We know that 38% of women have said that the most influential person in their decision to choose life or to choose abortion is the father. 38% of men, it just happens to be the exact same number in a completely different poll, said that they believed they were the number one influence in the mom's decision to choose life or choose abortion. We know that 97% of men who see an ultrasound and go through a fatherhood program choose life. And not only are they choosing life, but they're learning how to be better as they go through that fatherhood program. So there is a fire right now in the pro-life movement. I mean, I'm not standing on stage at the March for Life rally because people want to see my face. Like, it's because of what Men for Life is doing. It's because of what Men for Life represents. And it's because the movement as a whole understands we've been overlooking men for 53 years, and it's time. And so, if you're a man listening to this, if you're a woman who knows a man, and you need to share this with them, there are opportunities. There's so many opportunities. Even if your local pregnancy center doesn't yet have a fatherhood program, if you call them and say, hey, I want to volunteer for a fatherhood program, now they know they can.
Or even just call and let them know, hey, if you have a guy come in and you don't have someone to talk to him, I'm available.
Yes.
So I would encourage you, even if you're a pastor listening, and if your job, if you work from home, if your job allows you some flexibility, reach out to your pregnancy center and just say, look, no pressure, but if a dude comes in, I'm here. I'm available. I'll go through whatever training you need me to go through, but I just need you to know I'm available. It's the same thing. We have the local pregnancy center here. They do parenting class through a local church. And the pregnancy center reached out and said, because I've let them know, hey, I'm here. You're now my local center. If there's anything I can do. And they were like, if a guy happens to come to that dad's class, would you be available? Well, it just so happens where that church, where that class is hosted is the church we go to on Wednesday nights. And guess when they have their parenting class? Wednesday nights. So I'm already there. I was like, yeah, here's my cell. If a dude walks in, I'll stop what I'm doing and come be a part of that. Sometimes it is that easy. And then one thing I would say, one thing that really changed my perspective on health and just on leading in general was I heard someone say, you're willing to die for your family. Look, we as men, we should all say we're willing to die for our family. But they flipped it and they said, but are you willing to live for them? And that little flip of that mindset made me go, I need to get some things in order.
Yeah.
Am I willing to live for them? Am I willing to take care of myself? Am I willing? And so in the same way, are we willing, we would say we're willing to die for our country. This Tennessee state flag, I'm willing to throw, but are we willing to live for it? Do I want my community to flourish? Do I want my church to flourish? Do I want my local pregnancy center to flourish? Well, if we want those things to occur, we can't just sit on our hands and argue all the time and say, the sky's falling and there's no hope for humanity, when God has called us and has provided us the hope for humanity. Like we don't get the luxury of just sitting there and ranting and raving and not getting involved. And so I would just encourage you to reach out. Now, some of those folks that go, we don't really have that many guys walk in. That's okay. Just so you know, I'm ready. Here's my phone number. Whenever that time comes,
That's right.
I'm prepared. Let them know that you're willing and a part of that community, and you want to see those guys and those families flourish.
Man, I think that's a great jumping off point for today. I think, just to recap that, pregnancy centers are the heart of the pro-life movement. They are,
Amen.
The boots on the ground. They are in it every day, meeting the young men, young women, and families in unexpected pregnancies, meeting them where they're at in the time of what in many instances is a crisis. And so, they do so much more than any criticism could ever come. And that's the reason that the voices against them are so loud. That's the reason that there are challenges. We didn't bring up the abortion pill reversal. I just want to point out one case specifically. The state of Colorado had prohibited pregnancy centers from offering abortion pill reversal. They were classifying it as fake healthcare. The courts have overruled that law or found that law to be unjust. And to the point where not only are pregnancy centers in Colorado now allowed to offer abortion pill reversal, but the state of Colorado has to pay over $6 million in legal fees to the abortion clinics for that legal battle. Over 7,000 babies have been saved. Healthy babies have been delivered through the abortion pill reversal process to date. And that's a service that's also provided by pregnancy centers. So, if you're not involved in a pregnancy center, I'll talk to you and I'll let Andrew talk to the people who are involved in pregnancy centers to close out. But if you're not involved in a pregnancy center, you should be. If you don't know what your local pregnancy center does, call them and ask them. If you're looking for somewhere to give, and I say this as someone who needs people to give to me, give to your local pregnancy center, because they do the work each and every day that is so important. And Andrew, you want to close out with a message to those people working in the pregnancy center?
Yeah, and I'd say if you're getting up every day and doing the work, hats off. I mean, it is, it's hard, it's heavy. Sometimes it goes unnoticed, but we need you to know, even the reason why the enemy continues to attack is because it's working. If what you were doing was not working, the courts wouldn't be going after you, states wouldn't be going after you, the abortion industry wouldn't be going after you. If what you were doing wasn't working, then they would just leave you alone. They wouldn't throw bombs through your windows. They wouldn't vandalize. They wouldn't seek to damage the work that you're doing. And so the very reason that the enemy has his sights set on the pregnancy center is because you are the front line and you're doing the work. So that I don't say that to scare you. I say that to encourage you. We are going to battle every single day, and we need folks to step up. And so if you're listening to this and saying, what can I do, from someone that's worked in a pregnancy center and continues to work with those folks, I would say pray for them daily, give to them, partner with them, and don't go to them with a solution looking for a problem. Go to them and simply say, I'm available, I'm here, you let me know how I can help. And whatever they say, don't, well, that's not what I wanted to do. Like, the way I got connected to a pregnancy center was praying for that pregnancy center. And so be willing to step in and just hats off. Y'all are doing great work. We love the fact that we get to partner with you. And I'm always blown away. I know people that founded pregnancy centers in the 70s and are still doing it. And I always wonder, would my generation have started the pregnancy center movement? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But I thank God that there were people in the 70s that were like, we got to do something. We got to get off our hands and get to work. And that work continues today, and lives are being forever transformed because of it.
Amen. All right, Andrew. I appreciate you, man, and we will talk again next week.
Yes, sir.